Thank you. Minor technical difficulties, so appreciate the welcome. I begin with two poems by two New England poets. The first by Robert Frost. It's called The Secret Sits. We dance round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. The second is by Emily Dickinson. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. Like lightning to the children eased with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or everyone be blind. These are poems about asking. These are poems about inquiry. And I like to think that there's something useful in considering the models that each of them present. So, if you'll permit me. Robert Frost, we dance round in a ring and suppose. We've all had that feeling, I hope we'll all have it again, of such vivid excitement, such curiosity about something that we want to know about, that it is almost like dancing. And it's frenetic, it's energetic, and it's part of what makes us alive. If that's all our curiosity is, though, then we're stuck with something that is, in some ways, essentially reactive. And that's where the Dickinson model comes in. Success in circuit lies. The notion of moving around whatever it is that we're thinking about. To know as much as we can, to see it as clearly as we can. It gives us the ability to engage complexity, nuance, uncertainty. Things that we must need engage in our lifetime. Now, both of those poems have a lot to do with my understanding of how I do what I do. I teach African American studies here at Middlebury. I am a Southerner of a certain age, born in 1964, the year of the landmark Civil Rights Bill. And very early on, when I decided what I was going to do, people asked me the question, what are you, a white Southerner, doing pursuing African American studies? Well, I went to a place like Middlebury, and I left there absolutely on fire about literature. And I went to graduate school, and you have requirements in graduate school, the same way you do in undergrad. The requirements weren't that exciting. The fire was dying a little bit. And then I took a course in African American literature, and it was life-changing. It was just an amazing experience. And the person who asked me that question, I still remember this, why are you doing what you're doing? I said to him, I'll never stop learning if I do this. There will always be something new for me to learn. Now, at this point in my life, after a lot of years teaching, I realize that that's a little bit naive, that that's true of really anything that you want to engage with. And what I think I came to learn, and I came to learn it through the second kind of curiosity, the curiosity of deliberate discernment, is some things about myself and some things about what my larger motivations were for doing what I do. As I said, I was born in 1964. That means I should have grown up in the South where I did not see the things that you read about in history books. I should have grown up in the South where you did not see segregation. course, custom is stronger than law, I realize that. But nonetheless, in the 1970s, when I lived in a very small town in Tennessee, Somerville is the name of the town, there was still a movie theater with an outside ticket window. African Americans were expected to buy their tickets outside and go up the outside staircase to the balcony. And while I don't know this for sure, I'm pretty sure that at the one department store in town, blacks could not try on the clothes they bought before they bought them. Incidentally, the men who owned these two stores were parishioners of my father. My father was a Presbyterian minister. And so it was not an abstraction to me. But the thing I remember most from my young life was a day when I was probably about 8 years old, walking to town to get something for my mother from the grocery store. And up ahead of me on the sidewalk, there was an African American man. I'm not sure how old he was, but he was an older adult. I suspect somewhere around the age I am now. Dressed as if he had been doing day labor. He saw me coming. He stepped off the sidewalk into the traffic, and he took his hat off. And when I got past him, I turned around and looked back, and I saw him putting his hat back on and getting on the sidewalk to go on about his business. At 8, I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it wasn't right. It didn't make sense. And what I figured out over the years, in terms of what I do, part of it is about making sense of that. I remembered later on in graduate school a conversation I had with my undergraduate advisor when I told him that story the spring of my senior year, after I had already been accepted into a graduate program, after I decided that I wanted to be a teacher. I told him that story, and he looked me square in the eye and said, "You have a responsibility." And I think on some level we both understood that was a personal responsibility and also an academic responsibility. And so I've spent a lot of time in my life thinking about that. And systematic curiosity, which gives one the depth of awareness, know the history, know the custom, know the law, know the practice, is a way to try to make sense of that, to manage it. And I think on some level, that's a really valuable thing. I also think that there's a way now that I'm able to use that same model, that mind habit, to work with the students that I have currently. Currently, I'm teaching a course about abolitionism. And a few weeks ago, we were looking at material that was a fairly vivid description of some of the pro-slavery arguments. And a student said to me, "I just don't understand how one group of people could so comfortably believe these things about another group of people." There's a lot of answers to that question. There's a whole series of pieces of the historical puzzle. There's also a deep question, his question, that I couldn't answer, that he has to come to terms with for himself. And I've found in my life that the more time I spend in the process of getting that information around the edges, the more energy it gives me to engage with those questions that perhaps can't be answered. It's okay that they can't be answered, because in some ways the exploration is what matters. To come back for just a second to Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost, both of those poems have the image of the circle. We dance around in a ring and suppose. Success in circuit lies. Circuits, circles, rings, they have no beginning and they have no end. If you ever wondered why wedding rings are round, that's why. It's symbolic of something that's eternal. And on some level, the fact that we are given to the path around the circuit is a gift, not a burden. And if we engage, I think, in a mindful curiosity, we access the path from as many possible ways as we can, and we're richer for it. All right, one last thing. I want to leave you with a thought about living the question. It's a poem by my favorite 20th century poet, Gwendolyn Brooks of Chicago. A poet whose career spanned decades because she lived in the question. And in the late 1960s, in a time of major upheaval in the United States, the year of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the proliferation of Black power, she wrote a poem called Speech to the Young, Speech to the Progress Toward. And the last lines of it are about process, about the way that one can engage. And remember, this is a poem written for people in tough times with unanswerable questions. But it's good advice for us every day in our lives. It goes like this. Live not for battles won. Live not for the end of the song. Live in the along. Thank you.